August 18th, 1590. Governor John White steps ashore on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. He hasn't been there in 3 years. He left to get supplies and couldn't get back. Wars, storms, politics, all of it kept him away. Now he's finally back, and he can't wait to see his family. His daughter is here, his son-in-law, and his granddaughter, Virginia Dare. The first English child ever born in the Americas. She was 9 days old when he last saw her. She's 3 years old now. But when White reaches the settlement, it's empty. Not attacked, not burned, not destroyed, just gone. Every single person, 115 men, women, and children, vanished. The houses had been carefully dismantled. Their possessions were buried. There was no sign of violence, no bodies, no graves, no note, no explanation. Just one word, carved deep into a wooden post at the entrance to the settlement. CROATOAN. That single word is the only clue to what happened to 115 people, and 435 years later, we still don't fully know what it means. To understand what happened at Roanoke, you need to understand what it was, and how precarious it really was from the very beginning. It's 1587. England is desperate to establish a permanent presence in the New World. Spain already controls vast territories in South America. France has been making inroads in the north. England is behind, and Queen Elizabeth knows it. Enter Sir Walter Raleigh, explorer, adventurer, one of the most powerful men in England. Elizabeth gave him the rights to colonize the entire eastern seaboard of North America. He had already tried once, a military outpost on Roanoke Island in 1585 that had lasted less than a year before the men abandoned it and sailed home. But Raleigh wasn't done. In 1587, he sent a second expedition. This time it wasn't just soldiers, it was families. 117 men, women, and children, including several pregnant women, packed onto the ships the size of school buses and sent across the Atlantic Ocean. They arrived on July 22, 1587. Immediately, things went wrong. The ship's pilot, a man named Simon Fernandez, refused to take them further up the coast to their intended destination near the Chesapeake Bay. He dumped them on Roanoke Island instead, the same abandoned outpost from the failed 1585 colony, in the middle of summer with limited supplies, and winter was coming. The local Native American tribes were not happy to see them. The previous English colonists had burned their villages and killed their leaders over misunderstandings. The relationship between the English and the indigenous Algonquin people were already poisoned before the new colony even unpacked their bags. Within weeks, a colonist named George Howe was killed by a local tribe while crabbing alone. Tensions were running dangerously high. The one bright spot, on August 18, 1587, just weeks after arriving, White's daughter Eleanor gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. 9 days later, the colony asked White to go back to England. They needed supplies urgently, more food, more tools, more people. White didn't want to leave. He had just become a grandfather, but the colony needed him to go. So he left. On August 27, 1587, John White sailed away from the Roanoke Island. He looked back at the shore as his granddaughter's first cries were still fresh in his memory. He would never see her again. White arrived back in England and immediately started trying to get back, but he couldn't. England was at war with Spain, the Spanish Armada was preparing to invade, and every available ship in England was being commandeered for the war effort. White managed to get 2 small ships released to make the supply run, but they were attacked by Spanish pirates and turned back. Then the Armada came, then the aftermath, then the politics. Year after year, White tried to get back to Roanoke. Year after year, something stopped him. 3 years have passed. Finally, in 1590, White managed to secure passage on a privateering expedition heading to the Caribbean. They agreed to stop at Roanoke on the way. It wasn't ideal, it wasn't a proper resupply mission, but it was the only way he was getting back. The ships arrived off the coast of Roanoke on August 15, 1590. White could see smoke rising from the island. His heart lifted. Someone was there. Someone was alive. But getting ashore was treacherous. The waters were rough. One of the boats capsized crossing the bar, and 7 men drowned. But White, he pressed on. They reached the shore in darkness. White called out into the night. Trumpets were blown, a prearranged signal he had agreed with the colonists 3 years earlier. Silence. They lit fires and called out through the night. Nothing came back. At dawn, White found the settlement. Palisade walls were standing, but reinforced, as if the colonists had prepared for something. The houses were gone, carefully taken down, not destroyed. Chests that had been buried, including some of White's own belongings, had been dug up. His maps, his books, his pictures, rotted and scattered on the ground. And carved into one of the posts of the palisade, a single word, CROATOAN. On a nearby tree, the letters C-R-O. Before White had left 3 years earlier, they had made an agreement. If the colonists had to move, they would carve their destination into a tree or a post. If they left in distress or danger, they would carve a cross above the name. There was no cross, which meant, according to White's own logic, they had left voluntarily. They had planned this. They had gone to CROATOAN. CROATOAN was an island about 50 miles south, now known as Hatteras Island, home of the CROATOAN people, a tribe that had been friendly to the English, a tribe that had a member named Monteo, who had actually traveled to England and back with earlier expeditions. The colonists knew these people. They trusted them. White was relieved. He wrote in his journal that he was glad to have found a definite sign of their whereabouts. He prepared to sail to CROATOAN Island and find his family. Then, a storm hit. The anchors were lost, and the ships were nearly wrecked. The captain refused to risk the voyage to CROATOAN in these conditions. They would return to England and come back in the spring. But they never came back. John White never reached CROATOAN Island. He never found his daughter. He never found Virginia Dare. He spent the rest of his life trying to secure another expedition that never materialized. He died sometime around 1606, never knowing what happened to his family. So what actually happened to the 115 colonists of Roanoke? Here are the leading theories, including a brand new discovery from 2025 that changes everything we thought we knew. The darkest theory, and one with some historical backing, is that the colonists were killed. When the Jamestown colonists arrived in Virginia in 1607, they immediately started asking about the Roanoke settlers. The reports they received were disturbing. Captain John Smith recorded accounts from local tribes describing how a group of English settlers had been living with a friendly tribe near the Chesapeake Bay for nearly 20 years, before being massacred on the orders of the powerful Powhatan chief. Powhatan himself reportedly admitted to Smith that he had ordered the attack. He said he had been warned by his priests that a nation would rise from the Chesapeake Bay and destroy his empire. He wasn't taking chances. Some historians believe this account. Others are skeptical. Powhatan had reasons to exaggerate his powers and ruthlessness, and if the colonists were massacred, why were there no bodies at Roanoke, no signs of violence? In 2012, a secret was discovered hiding in plain sight. Researchers at the British Museum were examining one of John White's original maps under special lighting conditions, and they found something hidden beneath a patch that had been glued over part of the map. A small symbol, the outline of a fort, in the interior of North Carolina, far inland from Roanoke. Someone had deliberately hidden this symbol, White himself most likely, or someone who knew where the colonists had gone. Archaeological excavations at the location, indicated by the hidden symbol, a site in Bertie County, North Carolina, have found 16th century English ceramics, pottery consistent with the Roanoke colony's time frame. Buried in soil from the right period, the First Colony Foundation resumed excavations there in 2024 and found additional evidence supporting this theory. The colony split into two. A small group went to CROATOAN Island to wait for White's return, and the larger group moved inland, deeper into the continent, to live with a friendly tribe called the Roanoke. This is the theory that has the most evidence, and that White himself believed from the moment he found the carved word. The CROATOAN people on Hatteras Island were the colonists' closest indigenous allies. Monteo, a CROATOAN man who had traveled to England and back, was deeply trusted by the English. The colonists knew this island, they knew these people. When things got desperate, food running out, winter coming, no sign of White returning, the most logical thing in the world was to go to the people they trusted. And the archaeological evidence backs this up. Excavations on Hatteras Island over the past decade have found thousands of artifacts showing a mix of English and Native American life in the same soil layer. parts of English swords, copper rings, writing slates, gun parts, and even glass, all in the same layer as indigenous pottery and arrowheads. Two cultures living together. And more than a century later, an English explorer named John Lawson visited the area. He found Native Americans who told him their ancestors would, quote, speak out of a book. He met people with gray eyes, people who looked different from the surrounding tribes, people who had English surnames. Then came the 2025 discovery that no one expected. In May 2025, archaeologists unearthed something remarkable on Hatteras Island. 2 piles of iron flakes, known as hammerscale, buried under layers of historic refuse. Hammerscale is the byproduct of blacksmithing. The CROATOAN people didn't practice blacksmithing, but the English colonists did. Someone had been forging iron on Croatoan Island in the late 16th century. Someone who knew how to work metal. Someone who had arrived with tools and knowledge from England. Kathleen Duval, a history professor at the University of North Carolina, called it direct evidence backing up the most likely theory, that the lost colonists went to Hatteras Island and stayed. They weren't lost. They just went somewhere nobody thought to look properly for 435 years. Before we get to my take, there are a few details about the Roanoke story that don't get enough attention. Virginia Dare, the first English-born child in America, became one of the most mythologized figures in American history. Stories about her multiplied for centuries. Some said she grew up among the Croatoan and became a legend in their oral traditions. Some said she was turned into a white deer by a jealous Native American shaman. And some said she survived, and her descendants are still living in North Carolina today. The present-day Lumbee tribe, a Native American community in Robeson County, North Carolina, has long identified as descendants of both the Croatoan people and the lost Roanoke colonists. In the 1880s, a state legislator named Hamilton Macmillan documented that Lumbee community members retained English surnames and linguistic characteristics consistent with the 1587 colonists. Names like Dare, White, Sampson, names that came from Roanoke. And then there are the Dare stones. In 1937, a tourist in North Carolina claimed to have found a stone with a message carved into it, supposedly written by Eleanor Dare, White's daughter, describing the fate of the colonists. It described deaths from disease, attacks from hostile tribes, and the survival of a small group. Eventually, 48 stones were found, all apparently from Eleanor Dare, documenting the colony's final years. Almost certainly fake. Most historians believe that there was an elaborate hoax carried out by a local stone carver, hoping to profit from tourist interests. But here's the thing, the first stone, the original one, has never been definitely proven to be a forgery. The debate continues. Here's where I land on Roanoke. I think the colonists went to Croatoan Island. I think the 2025 blacksmithing discovery is significant. I think the artifacts, the oral traditions, the English surnames, the gray eyes, all of it points in the same direction. They didn't vanish, they adapted. 115 people stranded in a hostile environment with no hope of rescue made the only rational decision available to them. They went to the people who knew how to survive in that land. They integrated, they intermarried, they became something new, part English, part Croatoan, part something that had never existed before. But here's what stays with me about this story. John White, a man who left his family, his daughter, his son-in-law, his 9-day-old granddaughter, because they needed him to, who spent 3 years trying to get back and couldn't, who finally returned to find them gone, who saw that carved word and felt relief. They went to Croatoan, they're safe, I'll find them tomorrow, and then was stopped by a storm. 50 miles. His family was only 50 miles away, and he never made it. He spent the rest of his life trying to go back. He never did. He died not knowing if Virginia Dare was alive, if Eleanor had survived the winter, if any of them had made it. If the Croatoan theory is right, and I believe it is, then his family was alive, living on an island 50 miles from where he stood, waiting for a grandfather who never came. That's the lost colony of Roanoke, America's oldest unsolved mystery. 115 people, one word, 435 years of questions. What do you think happened? Do you believe the Croatoan theory, or is there something darker hiding in this story? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. If the obscured past is new to you, welcome. Every week we dig into the history that got buried, forgotten, or deliberately erased. Subscribe so you can never miss what we uncover next. Until then, stay curious and question everything.